Warm welcome to this lecture series on organizational behavior. We are on the 5th chapter, and this is going to be our second section of this 5th chapter, which is on attitudes. So I'll quickly summarize what happened in the previous lecture. We discussed about the importance of attitudes in our life, or the power of attitudes in influencing our behavior. We also looked at the definition of attitude. So attitudes are judgmental statements which can be about people, object, or events. So attitudes will never be neutral. So attitudes will always be either for or against something or somebody. We also looked at the connection between values and attitudes, how similar attitudes can come together and form a very powerful mechanism which influence our behavior. We also looked at the three components of behavior: cognitive, affective, and behavioral. And we looked at the importance of affective component in influencing other components of attitudes. Okay. We also looked at the connection between values and attitudes. Values are more permanent and more stable in nature. They are also form the core which influences the way we form attitudes. In simple words, values means what we think is desirable for our life. In other words, what we think is important for us, what we value is values. So values can be social values, personal values, moral values, and things like that. For example, honesty is a value, materialistic values or valuing materials can be a value, loyalty can be a value, focus on relationships can be a value. So values are what we consider to be important. So we also looked at how values can influence the way we form attitudes. Okay. So now we are going to look at attitudes in connection with other similar words or other similar concepts. In fact, attitudes and values, we try to understand how they impact each other, because values are also internal assumptions or internal statements which we make, but they are different from attitudes. So here we are going to look at the difference between opinion and attitude. If you remember, opinion is the cognitive element of attitudes. Opinions are part of the cognitive element of the attitudes. So cognitive element means thinking related or information related. The difference between information and opinion is, information is very objective in nature. It is very information cannot it doesn't vary from one person to another. Information is information. So if I say India has so many number of population, it is an information. But saying India is a densely populated country, it is a relative thing, isn't it? So when you say densely, compared to what? And also perception of densely populated can vary from one individual to another individual. So the idea of, or the statement that India is a densely populated country is an opinion, whereas India's population is this many number of people, which is information. Okay. So opinion is, like I said, opinion is primarily cognitive, and opinion is very specific in nature in terms of it is not very general. What I mean to say is, let's say the opinion we form about a person, let's say your boss, you will have specific assumptions about that person. You will say this person is friendly, this person is helpful, this person is you know, will cooperate. So those things are specific assumptions we make. So that is why they are different from other forms of cognitive elements like beliefs and all. Beliefs are mostly general. Okay. So opinions are specific, and attitudes influence opinion, and opinions also influence attitude. They are reciprocal. They have reciprocal influence on each other. So how does attitude influence opinion? Let's say you have attitude about people of a certain social group. Okay. Let's say you have certain kind of attitude about Europeans. You think Europeans are very hardworking people. They are they have a they are more scientific in nature, or they have a bent for scientific knowledge. Probably they are very punctual, things like that. Okay. So this is what you have as an attitude about Westerners or European people. So let's say this attitude towards, so this attitude can be a favorable attitude. So you have a favorable attitude towards Europeans. So when you meet an European and you form an opinion about that person from Europe based on your previous attitude about that larger social group. Okay. So based on our attitudes, earlier attitudes about that particular event or a social group or a object, we form newer opinions. Similarly, opinions lead to attitudes also. Let's say you are new to an organization, you are joining an organization as an employee. So you form main opinions based on your experiences. All these opinions come together and they influence the way we form attitudes. I hope you understood the connection. Okay. So other similar terms which we used in our cognitive element of attitude is beliefs and attitudes. So in cognitive element of attitudes, we saw it includes beliefs, opinions and information, knowledge, things like that. So what is belief? Belief, in very generic term, it's a judgment about something. Belief is what you believe and what you think is true. Okay. So for example, your belief about afterlife. Okay, you think after we die, what happened to us? So if you believe that we will be reborn, okay. So or we may believe that we will become we'll go to heaven depending on what we have done, okay, in our life. So these are beliefs, and many a times beliefs are very emotionally neutral. As such, beliefs, they are neutral in nature. You don't attach feelings to it. When you say I will be reborn after my death, so you may not, in a strict sense, there is no fear associated with it. There is no positive emotion associated with it. You say it as if it is true. Okay, you believe that is true as a fact. Okay, so beliefs are usually emotionally neutral. When there are different beliefs, when they come together, they become ideology. For example, your belief about afterlife, your belief about justice, your belief about what is good and what is not, in terms of what is sinful, what is not. So all these beliefs, when they come together, they become an ideology. For example, in this case, it becomes religion. Okay, the ideology is religion. So ideologies are nothing but collection of beliefs which propagate a certain way of living, a certain way of conducting social life. Okay. For example, communism is an ideology. Religion, every religion is an ideology. Your political ideologies like fascism is an ideology. So Nazism is an ideology. So wherever there is isms, we can assume it is an ideology. Okay. So ideologies are nothing but collection of beliefs, different belief systems, different assumptions of truth. They come together and they become ideology. many a times these assumptions about truth are not real truths. They may not be really true. So these are subjective realities, which means each person believes certain things to be true. For them, it is true, or for that particular social group, that is what is truth. So we cannot question, whether it is really true or not. So if you believe, or if the social group believes that is what is true, that is what is the world for them. Okay, so that is how ideologies have a very strong influence on the members of the social group. Because if you belong to a particular ideology, you are grown up, or if you are like strongly believe in an ideology, for you all the other ideologies are wrong. You become a fundamentalist. Okay, that is what we call fundamentalists. Fundamentalists are people who believe only their ideologies are correct. Other beliefs are wrong. Other beliefs are superstitious, but my beliefs are more scientific, or my beliefs are more appropriate ways of living in a society. Other beliefs or other ideologies are against the nature of law. So this is what leads to, if this is the assumption, this is what it leads to fundamentalism. Okay, so attitudes also, these ideologies, if you have a strong ideology, you belong to a ideology which is like very, very strong, which has many beliefs, or it has beliefs about different things, and you are strong follower of that ideology, it can lead to prejudice, and it influences your attitude also. For example, you belong to a certain religion which believes certain things as wrong and sinful. Okay, and if you encounter someone from a different ideology, who for them that particular behavior is not sin, it is a normal part of their life, and for you, you look at that person, when you look at that person, you will think this person is a sinner, or this person is a bad person. Okay, example can be food practices. Okay, so certain food practices are considered to be sinful or wrong in certain cultures, or certain ideologies, certain religions. So when you encounter someone from a different ideology who has that food habit, you think this person is doing wrong. Okay, you have an attitude which is biased against that person, which can lead to prejudice also. Prejudice means prejudgment. In perception chapter, we looked at prejudice. So attitudes has beliefs as components, but when many beliefs come together, it becomes an ideology, and ideologies again in return influence the way we form attitudes. Okay. So in the previous slides, we looked at attitude and other similar concepts like values, opinion, and beliefs. Now we are going to look at some of the qualities of attitude, some of the information, or some of the issues in attitudes. The first attribute, or the first element, or first information about attitude is valence. So attitudes can vary from one to another. Okay, so it can vary in terms of their intensity, or the magnitude of favorableness or unfavorableness. For example, we form attitudes about many different things which we encounter in our life. Like I said, we have attitude towards a particular mobile phone brand. You have an attitude about certain incident which happened, like COVID-19. You can have attitude about a person, maybe your boss or your teacher. So we form attitude about many things. Not all these attitudes are same in terms of their depth or their intensity. For example, my attitude towards my country can be very powerful and strong, which is patriotism. Okay, compared to my attitude towards a mobile phone brand. I may not be a die-hard fan of a mobile phone brand, but I may be my attitude towards my country, nation, is considered to be very, very important, for me, because it influences my level of patriotism. Okay, so valence is intensity. Multiplexity means this particular attitude about something, how many elements does it constitute? For example, my attitude towards mobile phone brand, which may have mostly of cognitive and element, okay, but my attitude towards my country or my boss will have all the three components, okay. So it will have affective, it will have cognitive, it will have behavioral also. But let's say mobile brand maybe affect cognitive and behavioral element, in terms of I may have certain information about this mobile brand, and behavioral in terms of I tend to buy, there will be brand loyalty, I tend to buy the same brand again. But in terms of country, I will have different kind of information, belief, I believe that my country is great. I will have strong levels of patriotism. I will have the feeling that I will give my life for my country. I will be strongly emotionally attached to my country. Okay, so some attitudes are more complex than others. Similarly, attitudes can vary from one to another in terms of the purpose they serve. Some attitudes are, even though we have attitude towards something, doesn't mean that we consider them to be very important. Okay, my attitude towards my mobile phone brand and my attitude towards my country, which is more powerful in terms of the way it affects me? Probably my attitude towards my country. Okay, so my patriotism serves a huge purpose in my life. For me, that is like more central. Okay, so that is where centrality comes into picture. So certain attitudes are become more important to us because that particular object or that particular person or an event becomes central to our life. Okay. So in this particular slide, we spoke about what are the different kinds of factors or issues related to attitudes which differentiate one attitude from another. So how do we form attitudes? Okay, so we are not born with attitudes. When you are born, like I said in our previous chapters, we are born as a clean slate. We don't have any assumption about people, about event, about objects. We are very as clean as a river. Okay, we are like very pure in terms of our opinions or attitudes. But over a period of time, when we grow up, we become more judgmental. In other words, we form attitudes about what is right, what is wrong, liking, dislike, and things like that. So how do we form these attitudes? Let's say, my attitude towards other social group. Okay, let's say I belong to a certain community or a religion, and how do I look at the other community or other religion? Some people have very strong hatred or very strong negative attitude towards other communities. So, but some people, for them it doesn't matter. Okay, so how does this strong attitude gets formed? One, it can be personal experience. Maybe you had experiences where you had bad effects or bad encounters where you had negative effect while you are interacting with people from that particular social group. So your personal experiences, and also association, the social groups you belong to. So if the social group which you belong to strongly propagates hatred towards the other group, okay, so that can lead to a negative attitude towards the other group. Similarly, family members. So family members play a very important role. Your parents, your siblings, your grandparents. So what they have told you when you are grown up. If they have told you, no, these people are bad people, this social group cannot be trusted, things like that. Okay. So family plays an important role. Peer group and society. You belong your friends also believe the same. See, the issue here is many times depending on our attitude we select our friends also, and these friends will also have similar attitudes and they will reinforce your assumptions about other social groups. So it is like a reciprocal relationship. So the kind of social group you belong to, the let's say you live in a ghetto kind of a place, all the people around you are of the same community, same social group. You've never seen or had experiences of interacting with person of the other social group, then you will have negative opinion towards the others or bias towards the other social group. And also your models, role models. Role models are teachers or your movie heroes, superstars. So they also propagate the same assumptions which you have. Then you tend to have negative opinion or negative attitude towards the other social group. Institutional factors. Institutional factors means media or public information which you get, maybe the organization where you work. So all these institutions, what kind of information do you get? Okay, those information can also influence the way you look at people of the other social group. Okay, it is true for not just other social group, for any attitude on object, event or a person. Okay, so how do we measure attitudes? So there are different ways in which you can understand what a person thinks. In fact, social scientists, especially psychologists, social psychologists, they measure attitude in order to understand things like prejudice, bias or stereotyping and things like that. So how do we measure, or even workplace, things like job satisfaction, organizational commitment, all those things are also attitude. Okay, life satisfaction. So how do we measure attitudes? Usually psychologists measure attitude towards surveys or surveys which use scales. So scales are, there will be a statement, under that there will be either yes or no kind of thing you have to tick, or there will be numbers ranging from 1 to 5. If it is numbers ranging from 1 to 5, it's called Likert scale. So 1 will be strongly disagree, 5 will be strongly agree, or it can be 1 to 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1 will be almost always I do this kind of things. 7 will be never, I won't do it. So these kind of things are called scales. Scales are of different types. Like I said, yes or no type, or out of 5 you need to tick something, or you have to rank, or you have to compare two things and say I prefer this over that, all those things. There are also, so these are objective type of tests, objective scales, which means you give a number to it. Okay, there can be subjective measurements where you ask open-ended questions. You ask people, what do you think? What do you think about this political party, or what do you think about vaccines, or what do you think about this particular brand? Okay, so those are open-ended questions where people are allowed to subjectively convey their opinion or their attitudes. So the problem with or the advantage with open-ended questions is you are allowing people to talk and you get a very rich kind of information. But the problem with having open-ended questions and conducting a survey with open-ended questions is it's very difficult to quantify them. You cannot make you cannot generalize on all these open-ended answers. It becomes too much of information to handle. At the same time, closed-ended questions, the advantage is there are numbers where you can find out average, you can do a lot of statistics. Okay, but the problem is you give statements and you ask people to respond to it. Sometimes beyond what you have given, those information can also be important, which we miss out. Okay, and similarly there can be subjectivity in response. Even in rating scales, when you say strongly agree, strongly disagree, for some person strongly agree, the level of strongly agree will be different from someone who's saying moderately agree. Okay, so how you understand this word strongly agree, strongly disagree differ from one person to another. Social disability effect means certain questions people will not give right answers because they think it is not correct to give those kind of answers. For example, if you ask them, is it okay to bribe? Okay, many people will say no, it's not okay, but they may bribe, they may give bribe. So why they say these kind of things? Because they know that if I say it is okay to bribe, people will think wrong about me, people think I'm a bad person. Okay, so social disability effect can be a powerful factor in the validity of the in fact reliability of the answers. You cannot rely on what people have said because they would have lied. I mean, not necessarily lied, but they don't want to give certain answers because they will think this person will judge me based on my answers. And also sampling. Sampling means when you, especially these attitude surveys, we cannot question everyone in that group. Let's say we want to understand political affiliation or what people think about a political party in this country. Okay, so you cannot conduct a survey for all the voters. What you can do is we can only choose certain people and get their responses and generalize it based on that. So sometimes what can happen is the sample which you select, sample as a smaller group from the large group, may not represent the larger group. Okay, so what the kind of assumptions or the kind of decisions you make from the responses of smaller group may not really represent the larger group. So many times attitude surveys can fail, or the decisions based on these surveys with smaller sample may not be will not help in making correct decisions. Okay, so I'll stop here. In the next class we will talk more about the same key issues with another example in an organizational context. Till then, take care. See you in the next lecture.